Russian mafia killed partner and abduct goddaughter of this retired man. They forced him to do the despicable.
They could like his money.
He followed their orders, but he was quietly setting a perfect trap, hunt them all down on that day. Welcome back to Paramount Recaps. I don't have many subscribers, but your single comment is a ray of hope to motivate me. The film kicks off in New York City, where we meet Keith Ripley, an experienced thief who's up to no good. He strolls over to a pool packed with guys and casually takes out one of them with a shot. Meanwhile, another thief named Gabriel Martin catches Ripley's eye, and he starts following. On the subway, Martin pulls out a gun and snatches a briefcase filled with cash from two unsuspecting passengers. Not only is he a cash snatcher, but he's also into diamonds. As luck would have it, two cops notice Martin with his gun and jump into action, chasing after. Martin jumps onto the train's roof and starts crawling across it like he's in an action movie. When the train finally stops, he leaps off and blends in with the crowd, making his escape. Ripley sees this unfold, but plays it cool, pretending he didn't just witness a heist. Back at the precinct, the cops are reviewing surveillance footage, but can't pin down who pulled off the robbery. Later that night, Martin tries to sell some of the stolen jewels, but Ripley swoops in from behind and catches him off guard. When Ripley grabs the jewels, Martin doesn't even resist much. He realizes that Ripley's gun isn't. Ripley tells Martin they need to have a chat right then and there. Just as they're talking, a couple of Russian mobsters roll up in a car, reminding Ripley that he still owes a hefty amount to their boss. In the midst of the tense conversation, Ripley tells Martin he's got a job offer and wants to meet up at a bar. It turns out Ripley is in deep with the Russian mafia and needs Martin's help for one last big heist to settle his debts. Ripley had been impressed by Martin's skills during a subway heist where he managed to escape, which is why he's looking to partner up. He previously had a partner named Viktor Korolenko, but that ended badly. Ripley took Viktor out because he feared Viktor might spill the beans to the NYPD. The heist in question involves stealing two incredibly valuable Fabergé eggs, each worth around $20 million. Ripley killed Viktor because he didn't want to risk going to jail if Viktor turned on him. The next day, as Ripley goes about his business, he spots Martin reading the newspaper and strikes up a conversation with a woman named Alexandra. Things get complicated when Ripley discovers that Alexandra is Viktor's daughter, and he's not thrilled about her getting close to Martin. Later, Ripley lays out the heist plan to Martin, which involves hitting up a Russian museum owned by the Romanovs, a notorious mafia. They smuggle valuable Russian artifacts into the U.S. and bribe the NYPD to keep things hush-hush. While they stroll, Ripley shares that his motivation for stealing isn't just about the cash, it's something deeper. He believes he was born to be a thief and wants to go out that way. To seal their partnership, he hands Martin a rare coin, symbolizing their new alliance. The next day, Martin surprises Alexandra with a bouquet at her workplace. After her shift, he suggests they hit up a Russian club, but she isn't too keen on the idea. He tells her he'll wait for her and takes off. Now we shift to Lieutenant Weber and his new recruit, Michaels, at the precinct. After discovering that the jewels taken from the train belong to Russian gangsters, Weber is convinced that Ripley and Martin are planning to hit the Romanovs where it hurts. Michaels is skeptical. It sounds like a one-way ticket to trouble. Weber has a personal vendetta against Ripley, spending over 2 decades trying to catch him, but he's always been short on evidence. Viktor had just agreed to be Ripley's best man before Ripley shot him, which makes things even more personal for Weber. Later that night, Martin is hanging out at the club, waiting for Alexandra. When she arrives, they hit the dance floor, and the chemistry is undeniable. During their chat, Alexandra figures out that the Russian mafia likely took Viktor out because they wanted Ripley to settle Viktor's debts. It turns out Viktor had owed money to the Russian mob boss Nicky Petrovich, who was looking to wipe the slate clean in exchange for Viktor's help in the heist. But Viktor, wanting to protect Alexandra, refused to cooperate and instead sought witness protection, the NYPD. Unfortunately, the mafia caught up with him anyway. After a night of passion, Martin wakes up the next morning to find Ripley waiting. Ripley warns him to stay away from Alexandra and tells him to get ready because there's a celebration at the Romanov Museum that evening. Martin sets up a button on Zykov's clothes to look like a mini camera since Zykov is a museum guide. That evening, Ripley and Martin go undercover as police officers to blend in at the museum event, aiming to gather intel about the vault that holds the eggs. Lieutenant Weber spots Ripley and approaches him, knowing he doesn't belong there, but he can't prove it and reluctantly lets him go. Shortly after, Zykov starts giving tours with the hidden camera. Ripley and Martin are in awe as they check out all the security measures protecting the safe. They discover the eggs are inside an even more secure vault, and Martin starts feeling a bit defeated, claiming that the heist is impossible. In a clever move, he spills a drink on Zykov to distract him and swipes something from him before heading outside with Ripley. Meanwhile, a group of officers takes pictures of the duo, duo. Lieutenant Weber informs his superiors of his suspicions about the museum being targeted for a heist, but they brush him off, focused on other priorities. As the story unfolds, the tension builds, and it's clear that both the thieves and the cops are on a collision course. Will Ripley and Martin pull off the heist of a lifetime, or will the long arm of the law finally catch up with? Stay tuned to see how it all plays out. As Ripley and Martin gear up to execute their big heist, they get right into planning mode. One day at the gym, Martin cleverly manages to snag Zykov's handprint, which is essential for their operation. They also get their hands on a recording of Sergey's voice, another crucial piece needed to crack open the safe. In a lighter moment, Martin surprises Alexandra with a homemade lunch, but she quickly shoots him down, saying she's not a fan of Chinese food. Still, they find a way to enjoy each other's company. During their chat, Alexandra expresses her worries that Martin might end up like Victor, given his shady lifestyle as thief. Later, Martin meets up with Ripley and asks straight out why Victor is dead. Ripley lays it all out, explaining that they have no option but to go after the eggs because the Russian mob isn't going to let them live otherwise. Nikki Petrovich, the head of the Russian mafia, grows increasingly impatient and kidnaps Alexandra, demanding that Ripley steal the 2 Faberge eggs from the museum to get her back. Nikki claims the eggs are his, saying they were made by his great-grandfather and stolen from the Kremlin. With Alexandra in danger, Martin is all in on the plan to snatch those eggs. The night of the heist arrives, and the duo gets busy tunneling through a wall underground to sneak into the museum. A security guard hears some noises and alerts his buddies, but they just brush it off, claiming it's nothing more than some routine underground work. As the thieves slip in, they accidentally trigger an alarm. One guard checks it out, finds nothing, and tells the others to reset it. Soon enough, they disable the alarm and snag a card that opens the doors. To add to their advantage, Martin hacks into the security cameras, so the guards are left watching pre-recorded footage instead of the live feeds. Holding a guard at gunpoint, they make him tell his co-workers it's all just a prank. After tying him up, Martin and Ripley venture deeper into the museum while the other guards enjoy some cake, blissfully unaware of the chaos unfolding. Martin uses Zykov's handprint while Ripley plays the audio recording to open the safe. As they make their way through the museum, Martin crawls across the floor on a cart to dodge the laser security system. Once he gets through, he disables another alarm with a gadget he brought along. Now they're faced with the next safe, and just as they're about to open it, Lieutenant Weber catches wind of the alarm at the museum. He instantly realizes that Ripley is behind it. When Martin finally cracks the code to the safe, he finds the box containing the precious eggs. But just as things seem to be going according to plan, Martin turns the tables, aiming his gun at Ripley and demanding he hand over the eggs. In a shocking twist, Martin reveals he's actually an undercover cop from Miami, working for Weber to catch Ripley. He leaves Ripley locked inside the vault and makes his escape as the police arrive at the museum. The security team begins to suspect something is off, and Martin takes one of the guards hostage, ordering everyone else to drop their weapons. He slips out just as the police swarm in. Meanwhile, Zykov and Sergey discover Ripley trapped in the safe, and Ripley tries to negotiate his way out. Martin informs Weber that he's done his part, and now he has to deliver the eggs to Nikki to free Alexandra. Once she's safe, Martin finds himself meeting Nikki again. It turns out the eggs they snagged are just wooden replicas. The following morning, Martin shows up at the police station after they've arrested Nikki, but the officers want him to confirm the guy they've got locked up is the same Nikki. Unfortunately, it turns out the man in custody isn't the real Nikki. Instead, it's Victor, who faked his own death with Ripley's help. As it turns out, Ripley had made a deal with the Romanovs and cleaned out the vault of all the smuggled goods, including the eggs, before the cops could even get a look. This means there's zero evidence of any theft, making Martin's testimony useless since his actions were omitted from the report to keep Ripley from finding out. Plus, Martin's relationship with Alexandra complicates matters further. Since she's representing Ripley in court, the case becomes even murkier. At the bond hearing, Alexandra stands by Ripley's side. Later, Ripley gives Martin a call while he's at the airport, ready to leave with Victor to meet a buyer for the eggs. During their conversation, Ripley casually mentions that he and Victor have always known Martin was a cop. Determined to get to the bottom of everything, Martin makes a second trip to New York to see Alexandra, who has decided to stick around. When they meet, she reassures him that her feelings for him are real. In a surprising turn of events, Martin ultimately decides to embrace his inner thief for real. The film wraps up with him making a bold choice about his future.